Good evening. This is Pastor Scibelli from Baltimore in the missions office, and just initiating and sending a message. And we understand what an incredible situation that's taken place, yet not impossible, because with God all things are possible. And for the leaders and for the church, I think it's very important for us to understand that a man is trained by other men, and then a man trains other men, and then things take place where people are coming and going. I often wondered how we would ever get through the situation when Pastor Stevens went home to be with the Lord. But God came through, and God's ability and God's power and God's life carried us through, and also based upon everything from the Bible and how we were trained by Dr. Stevens for many, many decades. That never leaves. In other words, what a man imparts, 1 Thessalonians 2:8, Paul imparted his own soul, just as Pastor Narj imparted his very life, his own soul. And the reason why Paul said he did that in 1 Thessalonians 2:8 is because you were dear to us. They were very dear to him. And I know that the church in Pokhara was very dear to Pastor Narj, and he was also very dear to them, very precious to them. So it's important for us to continue. 2 Timothy 3:14 talks about continuing in the things that we have learned, and knowing of whom you have learned them from. Remembering that, we continue in the things we've learned from Pastor Stevens and from people in the past, and knowing whom we learned them from. And this is so important for us to continue to go on year after year, decade after decade, and century after century. How important it is as you think about this ministry beginning maybe 55 years ago, and many people coming and many people going, and passing through trials and tribulations and difficulties and problems, yet the church stands. I love Matthew 16:18. Jesus says, I will build my church, and the gates, or the purpose and progress of hell, will not prevail against it, will never win a victory over it. And in Pokhara, you have a church that's been built by God. God has used men, but God builds the church. I will build my church. He was saying that specifically to the disciples, and then Peter in particular. And this is so important for us to understand. And I know it's difficult for people. You know, we think about being with somebody for years and their impartation. But just think about this, which is really important. Maybe some people are here for 40 years, 50 years, 60 years, 70 years, 80 years, whatever it may be. But that you will spend eternity with Jesus Christ and with Pastor Narj. You will be with him forever in heaven. And there'll be bodies there that can never get sick, that can never in any way give in to any initiation, because there'll be no old sin nature, there'll be no world, and there'll be no devil, and there'll be no past. So millions of years with Jesus Christ and with Pastor Narj. And this is a very comforting thing, especially for church members of the body, and then the family understanding, a wife and children understanding that it's not over, that you'll be, all of us will be there shortly in a period of time, you know, and it's very important to understand that. And so as church leaders and as a church, remember what Jesus said about the woman that anointed his body. And this is what Pastor Narj did. He anointed the body in a very practical, personal way. That means he saw the body as something, the church as something set apart unto God, and then he ministered to the body. And when people were criticizing the woman in Matthew 26, verses 6-8, Jesus said, let her alone. She's done what she could. And what she's done will be a memorial. Wherever the gospel is preached, there will be a memorial of what this woman has done. And so wherever the gospel is preached in Nepal and India and in Asia and in the rest of the world. What Pastor Narj did through Christ and in Christ will be a memorial. Will be a memorial. He's done what he could, and that's what it is with all of our lives. I've done what I could. I've done what I could. It's not to be measured against somebody else. It's not to be compared with somebody else's life, but I've done what I could as God gave and God ministered. So hundreds and thousands and millions of years from now, we will be fellowshipping together forever and ever and ever with God, with the church, and with Pastor Narj. And that is an amazing, amazing privilege that we will have. So let's think of, let's think of the future, the possibilities, what God has in store for us. John 14, verses 1 through 3, he told them he was going, I go to prepare a place for you. And if I go to prepare a place for you, I'm going to come again to bring you with